Throughout history, the teachings of Jesus Christ have captivated billions of people worldwide, but many scholars believe that his most profound wisdom has been hidden, misinterpreted, or deliberately obscured. These hidden teachings don't necessarily contradict traditional Christian doctrine, but rather offer deeper insight into Christ's message that transcends cultural and religious boundaries. What we're about to explore are the esoteric aspects of Jesus' teachings that focus on inner transformation, spiritual awakening, and the direct experience of divine consciousness. Jesus often spoke in parables and metaphors, delivering messages with multiple layers of meaning. His closest disciples received more detailed explanations of these teachings, suggesting that certain wisdom was reserved for those prepared to understand it. The Gospel of Thomas, discovered in 1945 as part of the Nag Hammadi Library, contains sayings attributed to Jesus that weren't included in the canonical Gospels, offering a different perspective on his message centered on self-knowledge and inner divinity. Many of Christ's hidden teachings emphasize looking inward rather than outward for salvation. When Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you," he was pointing to an internal spiritual reality accessible through contemplation and awareness. This perspective suggests that heaven isn't merely a destination after death, but a state of consciousness achievable in the present moment through spiritual practice and awareness. One of the most profound hidden teachings attributed to Jesus is the concept of non-duality, the idea that separation between humanity and divinity is an illusion. When Jesus proclaimed, "I and the Father are one," he wasn't merely claiming a unique status for himself, but demonstrating a reality potentially available to all. This perspective is reinforced by his statement, "Is it not written in your law, I said you are gods?" suggesting that divine nature exists within all people. This non-dualistic understanding transforms how we interpret Jesus' message of love. Rather than merely being kind to others, the commandment to love your neighbor as yourself becomes literal, recognizing that at the deepest level, we share the same divine essence with all beings. Through this lens, love becomes recognition of unity, rather than simply an emotional response or moral obligation. The mystical interpretation of Christ's teachings also sheds light on his statement, "No one comes to the Father except through me," rather than a claim of exclusive access through religious affiliation. It can be understood as pointing to the Christ consciousness, a state of awakened awareness and unity with divine love that transcends individual ego and connects directly with universal consciousness. Many of Jesus' parables point to the transformative nature of spiritual awakening. The metaphor of being born again describes the profound shift in perception that occurs when one awakens to spiritual reality. This isn't merely about changing beliefs, but experiencing a complete transformation of consciousness, seeing with new eyes and understanding with a new mind. Jesus is teaching that the first shall be last and the last shall be first goes beyond social justice to suggest a complete inversion of conventional values. In the realm of spiritual understanding, those who cling to worldly power, prestige, and material wealth are actually furthest from the kingdom, while those who surrender ego-centered desires discover true abundance and freedom. The hidden wisdom of Jesus often emphasizes surrender and letting go. When he advised to lose your life to find it, he wasn't advocating martyrdom, but rather the release of attachment to limited self-concepts. This teaching parallels Eastern concepts of ego death and suggests that true freedom comes through surrendering the illusion of separate selfhood. Christ's frequent references to the light of the world and statements like, "If your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light," point to practices of inner awareness and meditation. These teachings suggest that by focusing consciousness inward with single-pointed attention, one can experience direct illumination of higher consciousness that transforms perception and experience. The parables of hidden treasure and precious pearls point to the value of spiritual awakening that exceeds all worldly possessions. These metaphors suggest that the discovery of divine consciousness within is worth sacrificing everything else to attain. This isn't about material poverty, but rather a reordering of priorities that places spiritual realization above all other pursuits. Jesus' teachings about prayer go beyond petitioning a distant deity. His instruction to go into your inner room and shut the door before praying points to methods of contemplation and inner silence. This approach to prayer becomes less about asking for intervention and more about communing directly with the divine presence already within. The concept of forgiveness in Jesus' hidden teachings transcends conventional understanding. Rather than merely pardoning offenses, true forgiveness comes from recognizing that perceived separation is an illusion. From the perspective of unity consciousness, there is ultimately nothing to forgive because we are all expressions of the same divine reality, simply playing different roles in the human drama. Jesus' teachings about judgment echo this non-dualistic understanding. "Judge not, lest you be judged," isn't merely about tolerance, but points to the impossibility of true judgment when we recognize our fundamental unity. Every judgment of another becomes a judgment of aspects of the collective consciousness of which we are all part. The hidden teachings emphasize presence and awareness in daily life. When Jesus advised his followers not to worry about tomorrow, he wasn't promoting irresponsibility, but rather pointing to the power of living fully in the present moment. This mindfulness practice liberates consciousness from regrets about the past and anxiety about the future. Christ's teachings about serving others take on deeper meaning when viewed through the lens of non-duality. Service becomes not just a moral obligation, but an expression of divine love flowing through the individual. When Jesus washed his disciples' feet, he demonstrated how spiritual realization naturally expresses itself as humble service rather than dominance or control. The miracle accounts in the Gospels can be understood as demonstrations of consciousness transcending physical limitations rather than violations of natural law. Jesus' statement that his followers would do even greater works suggests that these abilities aren't unique to him, but potentially available to anyone who achieves similar states of consciousness and alignment with divine will. Jesus' criticisms of religious authorities weren't merely social or political statements, but pointed to the dangers of mistaking outer forms for inner reality. His consistent message was that direct spiritual experience transcends dogma, ritual, and institutionalized religion. The cleansing of the temple symbolized the need to clear away anything that obstructs direct communion with divine presence. The resurrection itself can be understood as the ultimate demonstration of consciousness transcending physical death. pointing to the immortal nature of spiritual identity beyond the body. This interpretation doesn't negate the historical resurrection, but adds layers of meaning about the eternal nature of consciousness and the possibility of awakening to our own divine nature. If you've resonated with these hidden teachings of Jesus, consider exploring primary texts beyond mainstream interpretations. Study the Gnostic Gospels, particularly the Gospel of Thomas, for additional insights. Follow Jesus' advice to seek and you will find by establishing your own contemplative practice. Share these ideas respectfully with others who might be interested, and remember that true understanding comes not just from intellectual study, but from applying these principles in daily life to experience their transformative power firsthand.